Okay, folks, how's everybody doing out there? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. I think I am streaming now, but as always, I can never really trust YouTube, so I just want to check my channel here and make sure. And let's see. Yep, looks like we're streaming. Okay, folks. Hello everybody again. It's been a couple of days, and we are making a lot of progress on our hideous demon lady here. Just to kind of show you guys what we got. You can almost see all of it through here, but anyway, looking pretty good. Her head is still way too big, but that's okay. And then you can kind of see, feet, stuff like that. It looks a little distorted because when I have it laid down like that, but that's like really closer to what the actual body proportions are. Um, the proportions are all screwed up on this, but whatever. What are you gonna do? So yeah, why don't we go ahead and continue on with this a little bit. And this time I'm prepared. I got my old man glasses. I shouldn't have to leave the room for any reason, you know. So let's get it going. Okay. So what do we want to talk about? There is a lot of stuff happening out there in the world, coronavirus related. Let me just type here. Hang on, I want to look up how many people have died so far. Let's see. Confirmed coronavirus deaths 28,963. That's confirmed. Right. In California. In the United States, confirmed. Ready for this? 764,177 cases. That's how many confirmed cases we have. Deaths, we have 40,591. That's pretty fucking crazy. That's bananas right there. 700,000 people, 40,000 deaths. Okay, now why am I starting with this? Why am I starting with the number of coronavirus deaths that we have? Because I'm starting to see, we kind of touched on this a little bit last time in our last stream, right? But I'm starting to see out there that the right wing in this country is folding it into the culture war, to downplay the seriousness of this viral outbreak, right? And the reason why, for what I think, the reason why they're doing it, the reason why the conservative establishment, right, is downplaying the damage, downplaying the danger, and the number of deaths and the number of, the danger from this outbreak, right, is because they know it's going to hurt Trump in the election, right? They know it's going to hurt him very bad because he basically had a very, very lackluster response to it for about, a month. He spent a good, 3 weeks or so, almost a month, just basically telling everybody that it wasn't going to be a problem, that it would just go away when April came and all of this other stuff, and that we've got good numbers. And I don't know if you guys remember that whole thing with the cruise ship about how he didn't want to let people into the country, that were on this cruise ship because it would double the number of active cases we had in the country, and he didn't want to do that because it would make him look bad and all this other shit, right? And was kind of forced to make a 180 and eat his own hat. And now he's going around telling everybody that he always knew that it was all a big problem and blah, 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 right? And so there's basically some pushback from, the right-wing establishment, the Fox News types, the, GOP, people like Laura Ingraham and a bunch of other people kind of pushing back and saying that, it's not as dangerous as we all thought it was, right? And one thing, one of these points that you keep hearing is that it's not, killing any more people than the average flu cycle does, right? So normally in the country, right, anywhere between 20 to 40,000 people die a year of the flu. Okay, just normally, just every normal, ordinary flu that shows up every flu season, which is usually around the winter or so, right? Although you do get flu outbreaks in the summer sometimes as well, you know. And hey, what's up, 1911? How you doing? So, yeah. So, where was I? Sorry, getting a little sidetracked here. Yeah, so you're starting to see people, in particular, I mentioned Laura Ingraham because I just watched a video of her, uh, you know, talking to Dr. Fauci and saying, like, that it doesn't really, it's not killing as many people as we thought. And where does that come from? Well, because the official estimates, when they first did estimates of this back in like January, the idea, like the estimates said that they were going to be somewhere around 200,000 people, who may die because of COVID-19, right? That has since been adjusted downwards. And now they're saying only something like, 70,000 people may actually die of it, right? These are the people that they may result in around 70,000 deaths, right? And so now all the conservatives are jumping out and saying, yeah, it's not going to kill that many people. Why are we shutting down the economy? Why are we doing all of this stuff? We just basically caused a depression over nothing, right? And they're doing this basically as a way of kind of back around defending Donald Trump, right? Because this is what's going to happen. Okay, let me tell you this. What do I think the strategy is? All right. Um, he wants to reopen the country, right? He already talked about trying to reopen the country by Easter, and we didn't do that, right? He wants all the people in the states. He tried last week to claim that he had the power to force states to reopen and stop social distancing and stuff, and he doesn't. He doesn't have that power, and he's backed off from that, right? And then, so now what he's gonna basically he knows that this is gonna result in a very bad economy, which is going to hit and still be in effect right when the election comes. And when presidents, usually incumbent presidents, right, are running, have an election during an economic downturn, they tend to lose. Okay. That's part of the reason why Barack Obama got elected, right? Because, the Republicans had the executive branch, and the economy collapsed a month before the election. And lo and behold, all those people pissed off that they don't have work anymore went out and voted for a change, right? Donald Trump knows that's a threat. So this is what he's doing now. He's saying we need to reopen the economies, right? The Democratic governors are pushing back because the scientists and doctors are telling us it's not ready, and if we reopen, it's going to result in people dying. Okay, so then this fall, when the economy is in the fucking toilet, Donald Trump is going to turn around and say, "See, I told them that they should have reopened. They didn't listen to me. Now the economy is screwed. And if they would have, lifted all the restrictions when I said they should have, the economy would be okay." Now, here's the problem with that, okay? The economy was already fucked up before COVID-19 came around, all right? And that was like a big Republican talking point this last 3 years, was that the economy was great and everybody had jobs and blah, 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 blah. No, not really. Okay, the economy really wasn't that great. It was basically a house of cards. And we talked about kind of the reasons why last time a little bit, because the reasons why it was on attack, it was on a house of cards is because of, the Republican tax cuts in 2017, right? We touched on this, but long story short, um, when you cut taxes for a corporation, they don't take that money and reinvest it into their company unless there's demand for that money. Okay, unless there's demand for their product or their service, then they'll invest in the company, right? If you ever run a business, you don't just hire somebody because you have the money to hire somebody. You hire somebody because you need someone there to work because you're too busy, right? And, that's why you hire people, right? Because there's demand for your business and you need to expand. Well, if there's no demand, it doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world. If you just, if there's no demand and you expand your business, you're just wasting your money, right? So really, what do they do with all this extra tax revenue, right? A company like, something like Amazon or something, or Microsoft or whatever, right? Suddenly, they have all of this huge cash infusion that they weren't planning on. Well, what are they going to do with it? Expanding their business is just going to waste it. So they do shit like stock buybacks. We talked about that last time. When stock buybacks basically just artificially inflate the value of the company, and it just so happens that CEOs and board members and other higher level executives, part of their compensation packages happens to be in stock. So you artificially inflate the price of that stock, then these guys make out like fucking bandits, right? And that's what happens whenever we have a Republican tax cut. That's what happens with Bush's tax cut, right? That's what happened with Donald Trump's tax cut. And part of this stimulus package is another tax cut, and that's what's going to happen with that tax cut too, right? Especially now, and it's really egregious now because this stimulus package is there so that companies don't have to lay people off. That's the whole idea behind it. They're supposed to take, they're supposed to take this money that the government is straight up giving them, right? And they're supposed to use it so that they don't have to furlough people. They don't have to lay people off. They don't have to do these things, right? And that keeps people, afloat. Well, that's not happening, okay? It's not happening, and we have proof that it's not happening because there was 22 million people, right, who fucking got laid off last week, okay? Who went and, you know, okay, what'd you say? Okay, if the economy wasn't improving, then why was the employment rate so low? Well, let me ask you this, okay? Um, right now, the unemployment rate is shot through the roof, okay? 22 million people have now gone on unemployment, right? Why? Why did that happen? Okay. So all of these companies have all the money in the goddamn world now because we not only did we give them a stimulus package, right, just within the last month, they got, what was it, a $2 trillion stimulus package. Less than 2 years ago, they also got a gigantic tax cut, of something like $2 trillion tax cut, right? So there should be no reason if you own a corporation that is able to take advantage of these programs, you have no excuse as to why your company is bleeding cash right now. Good example of this, the airline industry, right? So, we mentioned this a little bit last time too. Like, the airlines, of course, are suffering pretty hard right now, right? Because, nobody's really flying. Although there are still flights going because it's essential, but now it's just sort of like, emergency workers and shit taking flights, right? So a lot of people have been let out of work, right? Well, why are all those people getting laid off? They shouldn't be getting laid off because these companies should have all the money they need to fucking keep them being paid, right? Right now. They have all this goddamn money because we gave it to them. So what happened to the money, right? See, there you go, dude. All right. So you're saying prior to COVID. Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Prior to COVID, it was easy to get a job. Right. Well, let me clarify that. It was easy to get a shitty job. Okay. It's still, prior to COVID, right? If you were unemployed and you really needed a job and you couldn't, if you couldn't have the luxury to pick and choose like I do, right? I actually have even right now, I have the luxury of waiting for the right position to show up. Even though I am getting a little desperate, right? I did talk about this last time. I am like, applying for stuff that I would never apply for like, way less than I was getting paid before, way less than I think I'm even worth really, right? And the only reason I'm doing that is because so much time has passed that it doesn't look good on your resume to be out of work for too long, because Because what happens is that the guy interviewing you looks at your resume and says, "Oh, you've been out of work for 3 months or whatever. What did you do during that time?" And then you have to like make up some bullshit like, "Oh, I was out there volunteering in the Serengeti to help AIDS patients," or some shit. You have to make some shit up in order to, I was training or whatever. In real life, you were looking for a job, right? So that's why I'm starting to like, because it's hitting that 3 month mark for me, and I'm just like, fuck, I really need to just get anything, you know. But yeah, prior to this, it's easy to get a shitty job. It's easy to get a minimum wage job, right? And even if you can't get one of those, you can just sign up to be an Uber driver or something, right? So that's why the unemployment was low prior to COVID, because you could get a shitty job, right? So that's what a lot of people ended up doing. A lot of places in this country never really bounced back after 2008. After the housing crisis, and like a lot of corporations and companies just fucking folded up shop. Kmart, Circuit City. A lot of retail jobs, right? So when you think retail, right? People who work retail usually are not, they don't have the best skill sets or resumes anyway. You know what I mean? Like, these people, they're not, they're those are entry level jobs, and usually it's because young people are the ones that work them because they're entry level, right? That means anybody can get them. Well, you know, when like when there aren't any jobs like that around, what are those people supposed to do? And that's what's happening right now, right? Right now, it's like, now even the shitty jobs are gone. Okay, you can't work at like a Kmart or a restaurant or anything right now because those places aren't hiring right now. Like that was always an alternative before. You could just go down if you really fucking had to. You could just go be a waiter. You could bus tables. You could. Wait a minute, is that really? Hang on a second. I'm looking at the live stream. Is it really that blurry? Holy shit! Because I'm looking at my computer screen and it looks pretty good. So hang on a second. Let me just kind of. I want to look at. That was always an alternative before. You could just go down if you really fucking had to. You could just go be a waiter. I just want to make sure that this is like you can actually see this. Okay, that looks all right. All right, I'm looking at my phone. That looks okay. Because yeah, on my computer screen it looks like shit. I don't know why it's so blurry. Maybe I'm just going blind. Anyway, so yeah, that's what's happening now. What's happening now is like now you can't even get a shitty job. So, even if like I wanted to go work minimum wage at some place, like go work at a fucking Starbucks or something, can't. Starbucks are fucking closed, right? So that was, and like a lot of people around the country, that's how they got, that's what they ended up doing. They ended up working for less than what they were making, right? They ended up working as part of the gig economy, driving an Uber, um, delivering food for people. There's like a handyman app where you can like hire a handyman for like a gig. Right. Well, that stuff's great and everything, but that's not on a, my pen is spiky. What do you mean pen is spiky on the sides? Oh. Oh shit, it's like starting to come off on my fingers. Okay. Well, I don't know. This pen's fucked up anyway. As long as it doesn't get onto the drawing, I think we'll be okay. Um, yeah, like, that's what a lot of people ended up doing. A lot of people ended up taking the gig economy, and that's stuff that's fine, but that's not really steady work. And you don't really make a lot of money doing that. That's sort of like the last ditch, when you don't have any other alternatives, then yeah, you'll drive an Uber. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm thinking, because like I actually have a friend that does that. A friend of mine who's retired, and needs to make a certain amount of money every month, and it's like I'm leaving that for my last, if I can't find shit and I run out of savings and everything, then yeah, I'll start delivering food for people. And by that point, oh, it's distorted. The pen, really? Pen is spiky on the sides. Huh. Is it like, let me try to refocus this thing, because maybe let me try one thing, guys. Hang on a second. I'll just go to my properties, and then I will go up to this and configure video, and then maybe my focus is just not exactly... How's that? A little bit better? I can't really tell. I think, does that look okay? Yeah, I think that looks all right. All right. Well, you know, if it's blurry, I'll just leave this thing here so I can just change it if it starts getting really weird and blurry. Current resolution is... Wait, what happened? What happened to my stream? Why is my stream not going anymore? What the fuck? Good connection. Okay, thank you. All right. It's still going, right? Okay. All right. Getting a little, yeah. Anyhow. So, yeah, that's what's, you know, going on with that. Shit, what were we talking about again? I was on a roll and then I completely lost track of what I was talking about. Anyway, I do want to say a couple of things. Let's get back on track here a little bit. So, I know I'm like, you know, I always pick on Donald Trump and stuff like that, but he actually did a good thing this last week. And, you know, I'm in the effort to be fair, even though, you know, I think he's the worst president who's ever lived. He actually did a very good thing, and that good thing was that he suspended student loan payments during the crisis, right? And that's actually really good, you know. And to be honest, I'm surprised that happened. And I haven't really looked into it very much to see the particulars about that, like for how long, or, you know, if there's like a limit, or if there's any kind of like, you know, any kind of like rules or whatever, or something you have to like qualify for. But the fact that that even happened, the fact that you know, that they were able to like get that out of them, I think is good. And I think Donald Trump should be applauded for that, you know, for suspending student loan payments during this crisis, right? That's a step in the right direction. Um, I think that really all loan payments should probably be suspended during this crisis everywhere. Uh, I don't really know if the president himself has the power to do that. Probably not, you know. I don't think the president can just decree that suddenly all your mortgages and all of your loan payments for any kind of loan are just suddenly suspended for, you know, the foreseeable future. I'm assuming that they would have to create some kind of program where your bank would, like, you know, take advantage of that or some shit like that, right? I remember in 1911 you said that around your place, like, evictions and mortgages and stuff were, like, you know, suspended. So maybe that's something the state's got to do or whatever. Um, you know, in California, I don't think that there is anything like that happening as of yet. But I think it might be a city by city thing. So I'd really have to look it up and see if, like, you know, because I'd be really surprised if, say, San Francisco hasn't already done some kind of, like, you know, eviction freeze or something. You know, but what does that even mean? So they freeze evictions, but you still owe the money, so do you have to back pay it? Or so once all of this is over, you get a bill for, like, you know, let's say your rent is, you know, $1,000 a month, and then this goes on for 4 months. Then at the end of that, do you have a bill suddenly for 4 grand that you got to come up with? Like, I don't really know how it would work, or however, you know, I mean, because you can't just be like, okay, no rent for 4 months, right? Deal with it. Like, no, that's not gonna work at all, because, you know, the company that owns your fucking apartment building, you know, they employ people too, right? They got to pay those guys. So how are you going to, like, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying any of this stuff is easy or simple or whatever, but what I am saying is that, you know, we need to figure it out, right? Because, you know, the virus just ain't going to, like, go away because we want it to, you know. Um, it's not going to just suddenly be like even if all of the governors in the country decided to follow Donald Trump's lead, right, and rescind all of the restrictions, and, like, you know, he's right, we need to reopen the economy, blah 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 blah, right? And if they wanted to do that, right, um, it's still like, you know, Oh God, where was I going with this? Okay, you know, the virus is still going to be out there. You know what I mean? Mm. You can't just like dictate, you know, that a disease is no longer harmful to people, right? There would still, you know, you would still have to like take some kind of social distancing and you know. So anyway, I'm getting off track here. Laura Ingraham. I was talking about Laura Ingraham, you know, half an hour ago. And I want to show you guys a video of her. So let me just kind of go over here and let's see. Laura Ingraham compared HIV. All right. So she compared this to HIV AIDS, right? Hang on, I got to skip the commercial first because I'm actually, let's see, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Right here. Pause that. Okay. So let me just go over here, hit OK, and then turn on my left monitor. And I'm going to turn this up. So this is Laura Ingraham talking to Dr. Fauci. Now I noticed that in the last stream, like you couldn't really hear this, so I'm going to turn it up a little bit. And you should be able to hear the desktop audio. Let me just make sure my desktop audio is turned up as well, because it might not be turned up. Okay, it's at 100%. All right, and here we go.
Of a vaccine. We don't have a vaccine for SARS. I mean, they got close in mice. We don't have a vaccine for HIV, and life did go on.
No, but Laura, this is different. HIV/AIDS is entirely different. We don't have a vaccine for HIV/AIDS, but we have spectacularly effective treatment. People who invariably would have died years ago right now are leading essentially normal lives. SARS is a different story.
But we don't know. This could disappear. I mean, SARS did pretty much disappear. This could as well, correct?
Yeah. You know, anything could, Laura, but I have to tell you, the degree of efficiency of transmissibility of this is really unprecedented in anything that I've seen. It's an extraordinarily efficient virus.
All right, anyway. So here's the problem when you try to compare this, you know, situation to, you know, HIV to SARS, or even to, you know, a normal, average, flu that we usually get every year, right? We have, let's say, you know, the flu or HIV, right? There's a vaccine for the flu. You get a vaccine for the flu every year, okay? And it's usually they know it's coming, they know what kind it is, you know, all of that stuff, right? So you can take preventative measures, okay? Same thing for HIV. You can take preventative measures with HIV. You can abstain from sex, all right? You can, you know, wear a condom, okay? That kind of thing, right? We don't have that for, you know, COVID-19. There is no vaccine for it, right? There isn't even really an effective way to avoid getting it, you know, like wearing these masks, like wearing a mask and shit, that doesn't actually stop you from being exposed, okay? What the mask does is that if you happen to have it, if you're like infected, it will act as a barrier and lessen the chance of you giving it to somebody else. That's what it's for. It's not actually stopping the virus, because the virus is like microscopic. It's you know, aerosolized, right? And I mean, maybe it'll make a difference if like some guy sneezes right in your face or some shit, right? But you know, the virus, like, you know, when it's aerosolized, it's basically microscopic water droplets flying through the air. So, you know, that's gonna go right through your fucking N95 mask, because all that shit is cotton, you know. I mean, unless you're wearing like a fucking one of those CDC spacesuits things, it's not gonna stop that shit. So that's the difference, right? So you know, when you have a fucking flu, there are things you can do to protect yourself, right? And never mind the fact that this is 10 times, you know, as deadly and like twice as communicable as the flu is. Okay, like this is like far more communicable. The rate, the death rate from this is 10 times what the flu is. So, yeah, here's the thing, right? I never get flu vaccines every year. I never, because I never get the flu. I don't think I've gotten the flu in 15 years in my entire life, right? Like, but the thing is that even if I did get the flu, chances are I'm going to survive it. I'll probably live, right? With this thing, maybe not so much, I'm like, a middle-aged guy, ex-smoker, even though I haven't smoked in like, God, when did I smoke? It's been 13 years since I quit, but still, it's like, who knows what kind of permanent fucking lung damage I got, you know? I'm like 30 pounds overweight, you know. As of this morning, I weighed 189 pounds, down from 230, I might add. So, making some progress there, but still, like, I'm still roughly 25, 30 pounds overweight for my size, for my height, right? So I'm kind of like, I mean, I have high blood pressure. That's a pre-existing condition that can be exasperated by this fucking disease, right? So yeah, I'm taking this shit seriously. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Your lungs harden and become worthless and painful. Exactly, dude. That's right. So fucking, you know, it's different. It's not, it's not the same as any of these other things. Even SARS was not close. SARS was roughly just basically like another super flu, but it wasn't any more communicable, and it was like slightly more lethal, right? It did kill, a certain, significant amount of people here, but it never really got out of control because it wasn't as communicable as this is. You know what I mean? This shit is a different story. I mean, think about that. Like, what's the death rate now? 40,000 people, right? That's 40,000 people in a month, a month and a half. That's a lot of fucking people. You know, that's not just a normal flu, and it's like we're about roughly halfway through the shit now. You know what I mean? Like, really, I mean, in some places in the country, the infection rate is starting to kind of teeter off, but it's still going up. You know what I mean? It hasn't gotten past that point in the curve yet. It hasn't peaked, right? I mean, it really, how long did it take for it to peak in China? Something like 72 days, So we're about 30 days in. So we still got some ways to go. And opening the country up early is really going to fuck that up. You know what I mean? So, yeah, and here's the other thing, right? So you notice, like she said there, actually, I want to play you another video. So let me find another video because this was a guy named Bill Bennett, right, who compares it to the flu. Now let me see. Is that the one I just shit? I didn't actually. You know what? Hang on. I am gonna find this video because it is actually something that's pretty good. You know what? I have it in my YouTube history, so let's just go to YouTube, and then I'm gonna go up to my library, and then where's my history? History, blah blah blah. Here it is. So this was actually on the David Pakman show. Gotta wait for the commercial to go through, and he's talking to a guy named Bill Bennett. Who I don't even really know who Bill Bennett is, but he's like a conservative guy, right? And this is David Pakman basically saying that this is weaponized ignorance is what he calls this. Okay, so hang on, let me just go back here, and we just find. Okay, so let's go to my left monitor, open this guy. David Pakman. I don't know if you watch David Pakman, but David Pakman is like really informative, and I think he's really good. He's really good, and he's not, he's not like a jerk. He doesn't insult people. He's very respectful of everybody. So, anyway, here's David Pakman.
Then we'll break it down.
Bill,
What are we missing about this virus? We see the numbers, 22,000 dead, how many cases, but you took a step back, and what did you find?
Yeah, let's take a step back. The estimates now from the University of Washington, which is the model everybody's been going on, even though it's been wrong most of the time by a lot, overstating it, is now they say 60,000 people will die. 61,000 is what we lost to the flu in 2017 and 2018. The flu. Now, we all regret the loss of 61,000 people, if that's what it turns out to be. I'm going to tell you, I think it's going to be less. And salute all those who are working on the front lines on this, the hospital workers, the nurses, the doctors, et cetera, and the generosity of the American people. But if you look at those numbers and see the comparable, we're going to have fewer fatalities from this than from the flu. For this, we scared the hell out of the American people. We lost 17 million jobs. We put a major dent in the economy. We closed down the schools. You heard Dr. Oz say we probably didn't have to do that. Shut down the churches and so on. This was not and is not a pandemic, but we do have panic and pandemonium as a result of the hype.
All right, so yeah, man. I could not disagree with this guy more. That's complete bullshit what that guy just said. So first off, and this actually ties into what you just said here, 1911. The number of people who have died, what did we say? 40,567, I think is what it was. That's just the people that we know of. All right, those are just the people who have died who we have tested, right, that have actually died. So in real life, that number is probably a lot higher. Because if somebody just dies in their house, or if they just die, if they're not like actively in the hospital right now for a COVID thing, then they don't get tested. And then if they don't test them, then they don't actually count that as a COVID-19 case, right? And this kind of relates to what you say. So you just said, yeah, CNN, that death certificates that cite corona can be mislabeled, right? Well, here's the thing, right? Let's say you have cancer, okay? And let's say that you were, let's say you have stage 4 cancer, right? This is just the kind of thing that if you have that, then you get the coronavirus. That will be enough to just knock you over the edge and kill you, right? Whereas before, like maybe you weren't doing so hot to begin with, but you're doing your chemo and you might have been okay. So what do you attribute that death to? Do you attribute that death to cancer, or do you attribute it to coronavirus, right? Would that person have survived, a little bit longer if they never would have got the coronavirus, right? We don't know, okay? And you can't really say. So that is probably an indirect, death there, right? Here's another thing. So now all of the people in the hospitals are all coronavirus people on respirators and shit like that, right? Well, let's say that somebody, needs a surgery, right? Or something like that, and they can't get it because all the hospitals are overwhelmed. You know what I mean? Like, then does that count as a corona death? Like let's say somebody needs an emergency kidney transplant, right? And they're on dialysis, right? And there's only so long that you can hang out on a dialysis machine before your body is just gonna fucking give up, right? And they can't do it because all the hospitals are overwhelmed with coronavirus people. Does that count as a death? Like, seriously, this is the kind of shit that we got to think about. What about guys who might need an elective surgery? Right, like let's say you have a tumor or something, and it's not stage 4, and you can survive a little longer. So the doctors tell you, okay, we're going to schedule it. It was going to be scheduled in April, and now we're going to schedule it in August, right? But you should be all right. And during that time, you're at home, and then shit makes a turn for the worse, and you end up dying from that. Does that count as correct? So no, these are indirect deaths from the coronavirus, right? So you got to keep that in mind. Like that number of actual deaths is probably a lot higher, probably a lot higher, And people who died that don't get tested don't get counted. So, I mean, you just said, okay, label pneumonia as COVID death. Okay. But what about all the ones that actually are COVID deaths and are not being labeled that way? You know, see that's the thing about it. So what that guy basically just said. Also, I also want to add what that dude Bill Bennett just said. You know, where he goes, okay, this is not a pandemic. This is what normally gets killed during an average flu season, right? The reason why that number was revised downward is because of the preventative measures that are being taken now. Right, that's why. So a lot of the social distancing and shutting down major events like fucking Comic-Con. I don't know if you heard Comic-Con got shut down. I'm really pissed about that. Right? Um, that kind of thing and people staying indoors, that's had a positive effect and has driven down the projected numbers of deaths. So the reason why it was so high back before, where it was like they said up to 200,000, is because we weren't doing any of that stuff back in, February, right? Beginning of March. We weren't doing that at all. And that was like, so now we are. Now a lot of states are taking it seriously. And you got to remember, like, it was like, it wasn't even until 2, 3 weeks ago that the majority of states even took steps to, any kind of preventative steps at all. You know what I mean? Like, because I remember talking about that. Like at the beginning of the month, there was like, when I did my live stream, 2 live streams ago, and I think it was like March 2nd or something like that. It was like there was still like 10 states that had no kind of preventative measures at all whatsoever. No guidelines. They didn't shut down any beaches. They didn't do anything like that. You know, so like it's really only been, not it's only been like 3 weeks since like the entire country has started taking this shit seriously. In fact, I think there's Wyoming. Wyoming still hasn't done anything, right? So, you know, anyway, so now as soon as this starts happening, now everybody's starting to flip out, and you're starting to see protests. We talked about this a little bit last time. You know, these protesters in Michigan who are like blocking hospital access, and they even blocked a fucking ambulance. So there was like a guy, a COVID patient, who was like, you know, in a fucking ambulance. Well, usually, when people are in ambulances, that means they're in trouble. Okay, so if they're fucking in trouble, they got to go to the hospital, and these assholes in their cars, with their fucking red hats and their AR-15s and shit, protesting the fact that they're not allowed to go get haircuts or go to Starbucks, might have fucking actually put this guy's life in danger. What kind of shit is that? You know what I mean? And I'm the last person to want to break up a protest. Okay, seriously, like I really think, that's your right. I personally think protests don't actually do very much, to get your they don't really do very much to get your policy enacted. What protests actually do is set the agenda in the media. That's what they're good for. So if you want to go protest something, don't expect like your lawmakers to actually take what you're saying seriously. But what it can do is it can get people in the media talking about it and move your you know move your agenda around, right? But anyway, yeah, I'm the last person to want to like interrupt anybody's protests, but the fact that what these people are actually doing is putting other people's lives in danger, you know, and not just directly like the guy who needed medical attention and was in a fucking ambulance and couldn't get it, right? Not just that case, but also every person that they talk to when they like refuse to fucking socially distance themselves from people, you know. Shit. I mean, seriously, like, if you're not going, I don't know. I mean, we made this kind of, I touched on this last time, but it's because I think it's a good analogy, right? Like, when I said last time, it's like somebody in a car refusing to let their passengers wear seatbelts. That's a good analogy, I think, right? Because it's not just you, like if you want to go out and expose yourself, take all the risks you want. You know what I mean? Like, nobody says you have to do any safety shit whatsoever for yourself, you know. Be my guest, you know. Go jump out of an airplane without a parachute if you want, you know. Go skydive naked if you feel like it, right? Drive down the street without a helmet on your motorcycle, you know, or without wearing your seatbelt in your car. Be my guest. That's, you know, that's completely up to you. But when your actions put other people in danger, that's where the shit has to stop, right? That's where, you know, you're morally obligated to not do that. And if you see somebody else, you know, other people taking these actions, and you know, you are morally obligated to try to stop them if they're putting other people in danger. Right? That's, at least I think so. I mean, at the very least, you know, it's why you report drunk drivers. You know, you see somebody driving down the street, you know, and they're like weaving around like crazy and shit. What do? You don't just go, oh, wow, I hope that guy doesn't hit somebody. It's like, no, call the cops on that guy because he might kill someone, you know. That's the right thing to do in that case is to stop that person any way you can, you know, which is like, you know, call the police, get the cops out there to pull his ass over. Let me see. Let me read some of your comments here. I think you're the only person watching 1911, but I don't know. Uh, I think it's lower because most people seem to be highly resistant. Who is to say the odds of getting ill from COVID? The only time I wash my hands is when I use the restroom and handle lead. Well, the thing is, we know the rate at which you'll get, you know, sick, right? And we know that 50% of people never show any symptoms at all, right? And then we know that of that 50%, 80% of those people will have mild symptoms. That is to say, mild symptoms are symptoms that don't require you to be hospitalized, right? And it's only 20% of that 50 who actually will end up in the hospital. So, you know, you think, yeah, your individual chances are pretty good, right? But, you know, it's exasperated by pre-existing conditions. Okay, so one thing we learned from China, we learned that a lot of men got it. You know, much more men died in China. And one of those reasons is because men in China tend to smoke a lot more. So if you're a smoker, you know, if you have upper respiratory issues of one reason or another, you have asthma, right? That'll fuck you up. Less people in the United States smoke now than they used to, which is good. But one thing that we do have here in the US is we have a lot of obese people. And being obese is just as dangerous as fucking smoking for your health. Right? It is. And, you know, it'll fucking lead to high blood pressure. I know all about high blood pressure. I got to take medication for it every fucking day, every morning and every night. You know, that shit is not good. And when you get something like this that can fucking fuck that up, you know, that's like, that makes it that much more lethal. Okay. So yeah, you know, maybe if you're young, you know, if you're under 30 and you work out regularly and you don't smoke and you're not obese and you don't have asthma, chances are you're probably going to be fine, right? But like I said, you're not just putting yourself in danger, you're putting other people in danger. So you may be a carrier and not even be sick from it yourself. You may be spreading it around to people, you know. And at that point it becomes, you're not just putting, you know, you're putting other people in danger. And, you know, the moral imperative here is to stop you from fucking doing that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the right thing to do, you know, if you don't want to be indirectly responsible for somebody else's death, is to self-isolate. So all of those people at those Michigan protests who are pissed because they can't go get haircuts. I don't know if you saw any footage of those protests, but you know, we saw some of it last time on the stream. But I'm sure you've probably seen, you know, these people protesting. They're mad because they can't go to the hairdresser. They're mad because they, you know, they're not allowed to go outside to the park, or they're not allowed to fucking go gardening and shit like that. And right, all of that stuff. You know, yeah, okay, it sucks. It sucks. Nobody likes staying home all day and doing nothing, right? But you may kill somebody, and that's why that's why fucking that's why the governors of all these states are enacting these orders. It's public safety, for crying out loud. Anyway, yeah, wasn't a problem the lack of testing. So do we actually know? I don't think we do because of lack of testing. Well, that's another problem, is that we don't have adequate testing. You're actually right. You're correct. Right. We don't have adequate testing. That was one of the things that the WHO said that you should have as a prerequisite before opening up your economy again. Right? We don't have enough tests. We don't have enough tests for everybody in the country, right? In order to, I'm sure you've heard in South Korea where they say they have like drive-through tests. We're not anywhere even close to that point, you know. So until we hit that point, until we hit the point where there's effective tests that are available for everybody in the country whenever we need it, then you should stay isolated, because you don't know, like, you know, you don't know if you've been exposed, right? I mean, imagine you own a business inside of an office building, right? And you have people in your office building and they're sitting there for 8 hours a day with recycled oxygen going through. I don't know what you do for a living, 1911. I mean, I'm assuming you own some kind of business. You probably do, right? And imagine you got your 12 or 13 or 15 employees, or however many employees you have, sitting in this environment all day, right? If just one of those people is sick, right? And not even sick, if just one of those people is a carrier, then they infect your entire staff, right? And before you know it, every single person on your staff ends up calling out sick, right? Or even the people who don't call out sick, let's say 5 of them call out of your fucking. Well, how are you supposed to stay open, if you have 15 people and you get reduced down to 5? How are you supposed to stay open with that? Right? It's like you're going to end up losing just as much money as if you just did it all remotely or whatever. You know, there's no reason now in this country for anybody who works in any kind of office environment, whether it's like, doesn't matter, anything that requires a desk and a computer, you can do remotely, right? And you own a gun shop. Okay, well, right on. Um, you know, well, I mean, imagine, I don't know how many employees you got, but like, imagine, half of your employees call out sick. Yeah, how are you supposed to fucking work your shop, dude? I mean, it still kind of applies, right? But like I'm saying, yeah, any kind of job that requires a desk and a computer, you should be able to do from home, right? And to be honest, it should have been like that to begin with, right? There really is no reason in this day and age to have to actually drive and go to an office every fucking day, right? When you can do it at home, you're just as efficient when you're at home, if more so, right? Um, you know, and it's really just like you just have to enforce discipline and make sure the people who are at home are actually working and not playing video games. And that's really what it is. The real reason why they have you come into an office is because they can go talk to you, you know, and it kind of it forces a little bit of discipline so that way people aren't fucking around. Right? You know. Um but there really isn't any reason why you can't be as efficient at home as you are, like, at your place of business. If it's like, and it's different if you own a store, if you like, work retail, or if you like have a restaurant or whatever. Obviously, you can't do that kind of shit from home, right? But that's like a big part of the workforce. Like it actually should always. I mean, I would be surprised if a lot of places don't just kind of keep that as like, a thing to anyway, to where like, what, everybody on Fridays work from home or something like that. I mean, think about like, it would cut down on fucking traffic. It would cut down on pollution. That's another thing. Not so many cars driving around, all day. It might even employ more people, because then you have to have a more robust IT department in order to make sure that everybody is like, connected and shit. And really, it's not that hard to be connected anyway. Nowadays, through the internet and all that. I just had like a Facebook fucking live stream thing with my little sister. My little sister is like, well, she's not actually little anymore. She's like, an adult and shit. Just had a baby. She like lives in fucking England, right? And I'm designing a logo for her podcast, which it's called Eating After Midnight. It's like her and her friends watch movies and shit from the 80s. Anyway, I'll probably when it's ready, I'll drop links to it so you guys can see it. And we just used like the free Facebook FaceTime thing and had like a meeting, you know what I mean? And it was like completely free. Like this is shit that like a decade ago you couldn't do unless you had like, thousands and thousands of dollars, invested in your IT department, right? And webcams and all this other shit. Well, maybe not 10 years ago, maybe like I'd say 15 years ago, you know what I mean? And now it's just like, it's just a free app on a social media thing, right? It's like, well, fuck, if they can do it for free, you can use Google Hangouts, you can use Skype, all this other shit. Like, you don't have to pay the money anymore to maintain this stuff. So why the fuck aren't we using it? We should be using this to like, make the economy run better. Anyway, getting sidetracked here. What else we got to talk about here? We talked about the protesters. We talked about, let's see. There's a bunch of celebrities who are now infected with the coronavirus. A bunch of people that I saw in no particular order. We all know about Tom Hanks and his wife. So, yeah, they were infected. Also, Prince Charles was infected. Also, the Prime Minister of England, the fuck was that guy's name? Boris Johnson. I don't know if you heard about that. He actually went into intensive care, Boris Johnson, and has since come out of intensive care, so it looks like he's going to be all right. Chris Cuomo, of course, has gotten the coronavirus. He's doing like daily vlogs and shit, telling people about his symptoms and how much it sucks, but it looks like he's surviving. He hasn't actually like had to go into the hospital or anything. Jackson Brown, Terrence McNally, Harvey Weinstein got the coronavirus. Yeah, well, maybe there is God. Maybe there is a God, huh? And fucking yeah, here you go. And who else? Christopher Hivju. If you don't know who that is, because I didn't know who that was, so I don't know. He was the guy that played Tormund Giantsbane in Game of Thrones. That's the guy that he also got the coronavirus. And who's Tormund Giantsbane? He's the big dude with the redheaded dude with the giant beard who like fell in love with the Lady Knight on Game of Thrones. That guy got the coronavirus. Anyway, something I thought that'd be kind of funny. It kind of shows you that, it doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how poor you are. We're all kind of in this together, and we're all vulnerable. The stuff like death has a way of equalizing everybody, right? And it makes you think about what is really like important in your life, Plot twist, God just wanted to reduce the population to slow down global warming, and we are mostly... Yeah, well, you never know. Maybe it's all just a giant game of Sim City or Sim Earth or whatever. And, whatever God that's playing it has, he's like, oh, there's too many people, so he just introduced a virus to thin the herd a little bit, before he gets us into a war with Gandhi or whatever. I don't know if you've ever played... Civilization. Civilization's an awesome game. Anyway, that was one thing I did want to talk about. That it is like, it makes you think about what's actually important, in your life here, because a lot of what we talk about is just stupid bullshit. You really what do people get mad about? Like all this culture war shit, right? Because a lot of this, you know, all of these protesters and stuff, right? It's like they folded this coronavirus, like, you know, resistance to the preventative measures into their interpretation of the culture wars, right? And it's not surprising because, you know, the people that are protesting, they're usually very anti-science about things. You know, they don't believe in global warming. They don't really believe in the science behind, you know, abortion. They have a lot of like conspiracy theory science shit like that. You know, they believe in weird ass alternative medicine cures. You know, that kind of thing, right? And yeah, it's like you know, you have to kind of like take, you know, when shit is actually real like this, when shit really hits the fan and it's a matter of life and death, it's a good time to take stock of what you believe, and maybe, you know, maybe a good time to like kind of throw out the beliefs that aren't working for you. You know what I mean? Um, I'm getting a feeling that a lot of people, because of this, because of what's happening now, are reevaluating just our entire system that we have, you know, of governance, and also even maybe capitalism itself. They're throwing that out. You know what I mean? And kind of thinking like, so you kind of go, okay, like we just had these huge bailouts. Okay, two huge bailouts. One that actually went to the, you know, actually more than one that has gone to the stock market and the corporations and companies, you know, and the banks, right? Even before we got our stimulus checks, right? You know, the banks got like something like $4 trillion, right? Even before we got our shit. So, and they didn't have to debate any of that stuff. They just gave it to them. You know, the Federal Reserve just went to the banks and said, "Here you go, free money, stay afloat." You know, now they're you know, they just gave us, you know, a stimulus check, and they're going to have to give us another one because $1,200 is not enough to last, especially if this is going to go another 2 months, you know, or even another 3 weeks. People are going to run out of money. And, you know, other countries are already doing it. Canada, for example, is giving every adult $2,000 for the entire course of the lockdown, right? $2,000 a month. So if you live in Canada, you're going to be taken care of, right? And this is on top of the fact that they have, you know, they have free health care. Well, I won't say free, but they have universal health care, stuff like that. So they're in a pretty good shape for the average citizen in Canada, right? Doesn't really have to worry about going bankrupt over this. Doesn't have to worry about going bankrupt, doesn't have to worry about being evicted, doesn't have to worry about running out of money, not being able to pay bills. Well, we in the US are going to have to do something like that, you know, because if this goes on, you know, if this goes on longer, right, the one-time $1,200 payment is going to run out pretty fucking quick, right? That is if you got it anyway. I just saw, you know, apparently if you owe like any money to your bank, they can just take it out of that. If you have back fees or anything, they can just take it from this payment. Um, if you owe child support, it'll go to that. That happened to my brother. My brother actually owed child support, so guess what? They're getting his $1,200. I hope she fucking likes it. Right? Um, so yeah, like, you know, shit like this is, you know, gonna, you know, it's not gonna be enough to help people, and so they're really gonna have to. I can pretty much guarantee that there will be at least one more payment, probably of $1,200 to each individual person, you know. And now you think about that, right? If they can do it, how come they can't do it all the time? Like, so, you know, because the excuse is always like, well, who's going to pay for it? That's the excuse. Well, where did they get the money for this? Okay. I mean, who's paying for this? Well, we are, right? Through our taxes, right? So if we can do it in this case, how come we can't always do it? So there are a couple of Democrats. I actually just watched this right before the news. You know, right before I made this stream. you know, and they're the same people you would think, you know, Rashida Tlaib and AOC and stuff like that, who are trying to push for that same thing that we have in Canada. You know, they want that same amount of coverage here in the U.S. You know, $2,000 a month for every adult for the duration of the viral, you know, duration of the lockdown, basically, right? And now you would think like, well, this kind of like UBI, like why don't we just have a permanent UBI, right? What's wrong with that? You know, we can obviously afford it. I mean, if they're doing it now, then, you know, how come they can't just make that permanent, right? Now, here's what I would say, okay? I wouldn't give, like, if we are going to do this on a permanent basis, I wouldn't just give every adult in the country $2,000, right? I wouldn't make it enough to live on. You know, I would say $500 a month permanently, right? Because we're going to need this. We're going to need this in the coming decades. We probably don't need it now, but we will in the coming decades because a lot of the jobs in over the next, you know, 20, 30 years are going to be automated, right? And not just, you know, high-tech computer jobs that are going to be automated, not just factory jobs. We're already seeing things in restaurants. You know, they have those like order menus where you just go up and like McDonald's and you just press the buttons and shit, and they don't even need a guy behind the counter to take your money anymore, right? That's already a thing. You're already seeing self-driving cars, you know. Uh, so like, how long before the AI is good enough to where, you know, you have machines that can say create a building? How long before that's a thing? You know, like right now, like you have a self-driving car. Well, there's not a big step from that to where you have a self-operating dump truck or a self-operating crane or something like that, right? That's guaranteed within the next 20, 30 years. You're going to have these robots that, you know, the people operating them are not even going to be operating them. They're going to be chilling by the side, checking their email and shit while the robot does what was programmed to do, right? Now, this is not to say that there won't be jobs because there's always going to be people who have to program the robots, right? That's going to be true. And there's always going to be, you know, testers, right? Even though a lot of testing is becoming automated. I mean, trust me, it is, right? You know, there's always going to be a human element involved somehow, but in the operation of these things, that human element is going to be diminished. And the result of this is that, you know, less people will be employed in these industries. Well, so now it's like, now it's not just unskilled labor that's going to be automated. Now it's going to be skilled labor. Things like, you know, heavy equipment operators, right? You know, so, so like those are like right now, those are good jobs that somebody with not a lot of education can get. You know, you can always you can work in construction. You can learn how to like, you know, you can get a certificate of whatever and go to vocational school, learn how to like, you know, work a fucking jackhammer or something, right? You can learn these things like, you know, and it's a good career path for somebody who like say for example didn't go to college or couldn't afford to go to college or something like that. It's a good example of like, you know, of a blue collar a good blue collar high paying job. That shit's going to disappear within 30 years. You know what I mean? And then it's like, well, then all the shitty jobs are also gone. That's going to happen too. All of the crappy jobs are going to be gone. You know, you won't be able to get a job in a fucking fast food place anymore. You know, like because it's going to be all automated. You won't get it. You know, right now we have guys driving Ubers and delivering food and shit like that. Well, what do those people do when all the cars are self-driving, right? Like, you know, you have self-driving cars, so some guy just stays at home, right? Buys like 6 cars, sends them out on to go fucking deliver food for people, right? Rakes in all the money, you know, and you can't compete with his ass. So there you go. Uber is dominated by fucking robots after that point. What are these people gonna do? You know, I mean, Yeah, so like here, all right. So here's an example. So okay, my dad was an operating engineer, scraper operator for 20 plus years. Okay, so let's say you know you have somebody like your dad who worked in construction for 20 years. 20 years, right? So that means he would have to be at least 40 years old or something. Probably older, probably in his 50s, whatever. Then he comes into work one day and the boss says, "Hey, we just got this fucking automated scrapper thing, then we don't need you anymore. So you're laid off." So what's he gonna do? He's got 20 years of experience, but his position doesn't exist anymore, right? How's that guy gonna get a job? What's he gonna do, right? Well, at that point, it's like I just said, all the shitty jobs are now gone, so he can't even get a shitty job if he wants to. Like, there's no more jobs with his position, for the thing that he's trained in doing, that he's been doing for 20 years, right? And then he can't even get a job like flipping burgers because they got a burger robot. So this is what's going to happen within 30 years. By the time I'm old and shit, and luckily, I'll be okay. Me myself personally, I'll be retired with Social Security because it'll probably still be around, right? And I'll have my 401k and I'll be all right. I won't be in the workforce. You know, what about all the other people who are like, you know what I mean? But all the other people who are like in the workforce that normally these jobs would be there, they're not going to exist anymore, right? And then you think, okay, what if you're like a young kid just getting out of high school and you're trying to get a job, and all of these jobs that are being automated, right, are usually entry level kind of jobs. So most people in this country, actually, the highest first time employer in the United States is McDonald's, right? It used to be the United States Army. That, like, back in the 60s, you know, it used to be most people got their first job experience in the Army. Now most people in the country, or not most people, but the largest number of people who get their first job experience is at as in fast food. All right. And you know what? It was for me too. It wasn't exactly fast food, but my first job was in a restaurant as a fucking busboy. That was my very first job when I was like 18, right? Bussing tables and shit. Well, why is it? Why is it that kids get jobs in McDonald's and Taco Bell and shit like that, right? Because those are jobs that anybody can do. Okay, that they're jobs that don't require any experience because you don't have to have a degree to go bus a table or to like make somebody a milkshake, right? So anybody can do it. Well, you know, 30 years from now you're going to have your fucking milkshake robot and your table bussing robot, right? And there's going to be like two guys that work in the place. One guy that hits the go button every morning and another dude who has a toolbox who goes out and like fixes robots. And that's going to be your restaurant, you know? And you'll have like a fucking data sort of Star Trekky kind of android that greets people when you walk in, and then a fucking C3PO and shit that delivers your food for you. Like, seriously, you know? That's what it'll be. Like, that Will Smith movie, I, Robot. I don't know if you've seen it. Fucking stupid ass movie, but, you know, it's not that far off from what's going to happen. So how do you keep the economy going, right? When all of these menial positions, all of the unskilled, I won't say menial, right? Because they're not menial. I don't know if you've ever worked in a restaurant, but it's hard work, right? I working in a restaurant, being a waiter, I used to wait tables. I used to work in a Starbucks. It's fucking hard work. So, when you say menial labor, that's kind of like it sort of insults people. That's what it is. What it is that it's unskilled labor. It's labor that anybody can get, right? So when all of that goes away, how are they supposed to get jobs? You know, their first experience working, right? Well, then you say, oh, well, they'll just be trained to be programmers and computer data analysts and QA people and shit. Yeah, okay, well, maybe, but not everybody can do that. Okay, that's not possible. And even if you could train everybody up to that, then what'll happen is that you'll have a glut of programmers and QA people, and then they won't get paid very much because you got so many of them. See, what makes computer professionals, what makes that a valuable skill is that it's in demand. Number one, it's in demand. Number two, not everybody can do it. It takes years of specialized training, you know, to be a programmer, right? To be a fucking systems architect, something like that. To be a QA professional, right? It's not something that just any schleb off the street. You can't just go grab some fucking homeless dude and just be like, "Come here, man, make my iPhone game." No, that's not true at all. You have to go to school. You have to be trained for that. You have to go for years, and if you don't have the right training, you have to have years of experience in order to make up for it, right? You can't get high school. You can't get that shit in high school. That's just not possible, right? And especially now with American high schools where it's all fucked up and they don't even try anymore, right? So it's like, it's not going to get any better in the future. Don't assume that people in the future are going to suddenly, you know, wake up and do the right thing. You know what I mean? Because they never do. They never do. All right. And it's like, if they did, they'd be doing the right thing already. You know what I'm saying? So assume that the worst is going to happen, right? When it comes to, implementing policy that actually helps people in this country. Assume that it'll get worse. And it probably is. Schools in 30 years are probably just going to be holding pens for, teenagers so that they don't go out into the street and form gangs. That's what they're going to be. All right. It's already like that, in some places in this country. Like it's already like that. Some places where teachers just don't give a shit and they just put on a fucking video so that the kids watch the video. Like if you go to YouTube and you look at school fights, and you see all these like teenagers fighting and shit in the classroom, and you wonder like, how is that even happening? Like when I was in high school, like that, people didn't fucking just brawl in the middle of the classroom. I mean, you at least waited till after school and shit to do that, you know. And it's because the schools, like, they don't break it up anymore. Like, especially like back when I was a kid, if you started brawling like right in the middle of the lunch quad or whatever, like, they had security guards that would come and like fucking, they weren't cops. That was the thing. They weren't police officers. And they would, they'd come and break it up. You weren't allowed to just beat somebody to fucking death in the middle of school. Well, now it's like they don't do that because the schools don't want to get sued. You know what I mean? So you see all these videos of cell phone videos of kids recording their friends beating the shit out of each other right in the middle of fucking Spanish class or something. It's like, God damn, what's happening? Already in schools, they have police officers in schools who will like, I did a video on this last year, I think, cops who will like arrest you for doing ridiculous things, not just like bringing drugs to school or fighting, but they'll arrest you for like, playing around in class, causing a commotion in class, which could be talking back to the teacher or cheating on a test or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, kids will get tickets for that, and they'll end up getting arrested, and then they're in the criminal justice system after that. That's what's going on in the schools right now. They're basically, so yeah, it really wouldn't surprise me that if within 30 years, schools were just there to, like, keep kids off the street, and you didn't actually learn any effective skills there, Of course, that's going to be, like, stratified depending on what the income of the area is like. Rich areas get more money for their schools than poor areas, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. To be honest, that even shouldn't even really be a thing. You know, really, access to education should be equal around the entire country, and the only reason that schools are funded by property taxes. The only reason why schools are funded by property taxes is frankly because of racism. That's why. That's really the reason why it's funded by property taxes. Because the rich people that live in the rich area don't want to pay for the poor people, and it just so happens the rich people are usually one color and the poor people are another color. So that's the thing. What it really should be is that their property taxes should go to a state, board or whatever, who then like distributes it depending on the need of whichever district needs it. And yeah, okay, some people, maybe there's fault with that. You can always, but you can find fault with everything. That's the thing, is that there's always going to be, nothing's ever going to be perfect. No policy's ever going to be perfect, you know, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to like make things equal. You shouldn't try to give everybody, like, because that's what's happening right now. It's like they're not even trying. Like, you should attempt at least to give every student in the country equal access to the same level of education. You know what I mean? Like every student in this country, right, should have the chance to go to college. Okay. Right now you don't. You do not. Okay. You basically your ability to go to college is dependent on how much money you can raise. And if you can raise the money, you can go to college. Well, it might not be the college you want to go to, but you can just find a place to go to fucking college. If you can pay for it, you can go. Okay. And you know, so there are thousands and thousands of kids every year who like know that they have zero chance of going to college, right? And even in this day and age, if you don't have a college degree, then that's a major roadblock to your success in life. And it's not a complete stopper, all right? I mean, I don't have a degree, right? And up until recently, I was making a decent amount of money, you know, and I have my own house and we have 2 cars and all that shit and a significant amount of savings. So I was doing pretty good. So it's like I'm living proof that you don't need a college degree in order to be successful, right? But I will tell you that not having that degree definitely slowed it down a lot. And I missed out on making a significant amount of income, right? Because this is what happens when you don't have a college degree and you go to get a job, then you have to depend on experience. And until you have that experience, right, then you don't get the positions that you want, right? So what ends up happening is that you end up working in a position where there's a guy right next to you who's right out of college, right? So you've been in a place for 5, 6, 7, 8 years already, working a job, and the dude on the desk right next to you is 1 year out of college and he's making the same amount of money you are. And you're, a decade older than this dude. That's what happens when you don't have a degree, right? That's what happens. So you know, now like I said, it's not impossible, and there's always people that buck this trend, and it's not universal by any chance, but this is definitely, it makes it harder. It makes it harder for you to like, find something that is adequate, right? It's actually kind of fucking me up right now. And my advantage myself is that, I have like 14 years of experience, you know, and I have like management experience and shit like that. So it's like, you know, right now it really wouldn't be worth it for me to spend the $9,600 it would take for me to go get a bachelor's, you know. But that's the thing. It's like it's prohibitively expensive. So that's a barrier, like that's a barrier to entry into the economy for a young person, right? And that's kind of what I wanted to like what I was leaning towards here, when I said earlier that we may want to rethink a lot of how we do things in this country because we have a lot of barriers like that other people in other countries don't have, you know. The prohibitively expensive college tuition is a barrier, right? People take out loans that they have to pay back over decades, right? So imagine that you do manage to get to college, right? And you got to take out a loan for $150,000, right? When you're fucking 22. Okay, that's a lot of money when you're 20, and so you're basically paying back this loan. It's like buying a house almost, and that's actually on the cheaper side, right? Some of these loans go up to be, $200,000-300,000 depending on where you're going, depending on how much of the tuition it is and shit for where you're going, right? So imagine then, yeah, okay, you do go to college, right? And you end up, you still have to get a shitty job anyway once you get out of college because you don't have no experience. So even if you are going to say be a fucking programmer or something, your first programmer job is probably going to be $15 an hour, if even that. You're probably going to be a temp. You don't usually get a permanent position straight out of college without any like experience unless you go work for some startup by a guy who doesn't know what he's doing or some shit. You know what I mean? So for, and then a huge chunk of your fucking paycheck is going to this house payment for a house you don't have. Right? So, people in Germany, people in, you know, other places in the world, the Netherlands, for example, right? Who have, who have tuition-free college. They don't have that step. They don't have that, that pushing them back, that barrier to entry into the economy. So what does that mean, right? That means when they get out and they get the jobs that they can spend money immediately, right? They can buy goods and services. They can buy their own houses. They can buy cars. They can do shit like that because they don't have like, this huge fucking expense that eats up all of their income right out of the fucking gate. You know what I mean? They don't have to do shit like, here in the US you got guys who are like people who get working minimum wage, like something like, like for example, what I'll see in Los Angeles, what you'll see is that you'll get 5 people sharing a 1-bedroom apartment in downtown LA or something, right? And their 1-bedroom apartment will be, almost $2,000 a month. The rent, right? And in order to afford living there, since everybody that works there is getting minimum wage, they have to have like 4 or 5 people living in this 1 bedroom, right? In order to just pay for their like rent, because it's not just rent. I mean, you got to remember you have other bills and shit. You have everybody, phone bill, and you have your power, and you have internet, and if you need a car, there's no effective public transportation in this fucking city. Public transportation in Los Angeles is a joke. So if you don't have a car, then you're not going anywhere. If you can't get anywhere, you can't go to your job in the first place. So it's like all of this shit, compounds. And I imagine it's not that much different depending on whatever state you're in. You know what I mean? Just so, yeah, like, for example, in Nevada, right, it might be cheaper. It might be $700 for an apartment, right? But then the job you get, is the federal minimum wage, which is what, $7.50 still, It's been $7.50 for like 25 years now and shit. You know what I mean? Like, I think in California, the minimum wage is $12.50. It's really not, I mean, that's almost twice, and it's still not very much. It's still not enough to live on, right? Not really. And so that's why you have like 6 people sharing a 1 fucking bedroom apartment and shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's like one step above homelessness, And then you think like, what happens if you have an accident? What happens if you have to go to the dentist? I've been in that situation before where fucking like I had like a major fucking toothache and I didn't have any money. So what do? You don't go to the dentist, and then your fucking mouth hurts, for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And then the thing is that the thing with like dental care and shit like that is that if you don't fucking go, it just gets worse, and then it costs more. And then before you know it, you need a whole fucking root canal, whereas before you just needed a filling. And then that ends up costing you fucking $3,000. Whereas if you just would have gone and got your filling in the first place, it just would have been maybe like, $200, right? But, it's like if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. So what do you fucking do? I have a friend who like, for years, like had fucked up teeth, and I kept telling him like, dude, go to the dentist, and he didn't have any money, and I think he eventually went, he found like a place where students would do it for free. What kind of shit is that? Where you're like, people are having to go get like discount dental care from students in order to just even get any care at all. In Holland, do they have this problem? Right? In the Netherlands, do they have this problem? In France, do they have this problem? No, they don't. They don't have this problem. That's not, in Canada, in Japan, they don't have this problem. Okay? This is not even something that somebody has to worry about if you live there, you know. And that's why they're like they're adapting to all of the shit that's happening right now way better than we are, you know. Like right now we got 22 million people who are out of work, right? Well, these people, if you don't have a job, you don't have health insurance, right? If you don't have health insurance, what are you going to do if you catch this virus if you don't have health insurance? Okay? It can cost you, if you have insurance, it can cost you 3 grand, right? If you don't have insurance, it's going to be like $30,000. You know, what are you going to do, right? How the fuck are you supposed to like survive that? Are you going to go to the doctor if it's going to cost you $30,000? You know, seriously, like, yeah, okay, none of those countries have to worry about defending themselves either. Yeah, well, maybe, you know, but maybe we ought to like spread some of that cost around. Maybe we should go sign a peace treaty with Russia because they're not the Soviet fucking Union anymore. See, that's another thing. They never actually did that. After the Soviet Union collapsed, right? The Russia put out feelers for all this. Hey, maybe we can stand down some of this shit. They still, I think, I don't know if they still do it or not, but the whole like flying nuclear bombers within, Russian airspace and shit, ready for a nuclear war. Like, they still do that. Can you fucking believe that shit? It's like the Cold War ended 30 years ago. Why are you guys still flying nuclear bombers? You know, that was a major missed opportunity, right? And I can kind of understand now because Russia's now are like kind of like our fucking enemy again, right? They kind of blew it. They kind of blew a major opportunity back then when the Soviet Union collapsed. They should have gone in there and fucking signed a shitload of peace treaties and started disarming. And at the very least, like took down like I think I read something where they started to actually stand some of that stuff down so we don't have those bombers anymore or something. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. You know, but that was a major missed opportunity. And the thing is, if I remember right, the Russians actually reached out to us and wanted to like, do that. And it was like the United States said, no, we're not going to start dismantling some of this Cold War era infrastructure. You know, who knows? I mean, I'd have to read more about it, but I would probably say that was due to the influence of the military industrial complex. Right. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know enough about that, so I can't really say one way or the other. Fuck. All right, my hand hurts, man. Fuck. I'm like, seriously, I gotta take a break here for a second. 'Cause- so let's look at what we got here. I just added a bunch of stuff around our demon woman. Can you guys see this okay at home? Yeah, I think it looks okay. We got at least two viewers going, so 1911, and there's at least one other person. I don't know. How did we get on all this? Oh yeah, we were talking about universal basic income. So, getting back to what we were talking about before, all of these jobs and shit are like going away. So we're gonna have to eventually, by the time I'm old and shit, by the time I'm in my 80s probably, they're going to have some kind of UBI, some kind of universal basic income in order to make up for, automation. And this is just like the way things are trending right now, right? Um, you know, this is not like taking into account any other worldwide like, catastrophes or anything like that. Post on Rule 34. You mean this thing? Post this on. Well, yeah, I'd have to add some. I'd have to add some hidden penises in here and shit. You know. Let's see. Let's do a little bit down here because we've been drawn up there a lot. Let's put some shit down here. Anyway, I don't know, man. I'm like, I like to think of myself as a optimist, but really, I don't really see, you know, any viable solutions for a lot of these problems without fundamental changes to our society. And I don't think under our current political um, zeitgeist, I guess, that we even have the capacity to change, right? For example, global climate change. We know that that's going to be a problem, right? That's coming. It's going to be a problem. It's, if it isn't already within the next 30 years or so, you're going to start seeing um, ecosystems collapsing. You're already seeing it, right, in many places in this in this world, in the world, like the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is like slowly dying off, because coral is very sensitive to the temperature of the water. So the waters are increasing, coral reefs are dying all over the world, right? Coral reefs die, that impacts all of those species that live within coral reefs, a lot of the ocean is becoming more acidic because it's absorbing carbon and shit like that. That's killing off a lot of wildlife. And then you have runoff from farms and shit. You know, right now in the Gulf of Mexico, there's like this gigantic dead zone. Because what happens is like because all the nitrogen and shit that runs off from farms, right, into the water causes it causes algae to grow, and this algae sucks up all the oxygen, right? And that means that nothing can fucking live in this water because there's not enough oxygen in it, right? And all of these fish and shit die. So now you have this like 800-mile square dead zone in the middle of like, that impacts jobs. That impacts jobs. So if you're a fisherman in Louisiana, like which is famous for its like cooking and like crawdaddies and shit, and you go out there and there's no fucking fish and you got to go out further and further, in order to catch your fish, right? And then those fish stocks get lower and lower because they have less habitat, right? And habitats that, usually were not being fished are now being fished. So now they come up with all these other fish that are inedible, and they just throw those away. So I don't know if you know that, but when fisheries, deep sea fisheries and stuff, you know, catch fish that they're not supposed to be sent, like catch fish that they can't sell, they usually just fucking toss it. It just goes to waste. It's like all these fish that are just dead, you know. Like sometimes they sell them to fucking like cat food factories and shit, but usually it just goes to waste. And it's like they just, and then you have guys in like the South China Sea with these, because there's like, China, there's no regulations, so they just troll the whole fucking ocean with these giant nets and just catch everything, you know. So it's like all these tropical fish and dolphins and all of that stuff, and they just haul it all in. They pick out the fish they want, and then everything else just gets dumped. Half of it's already fucking dead by the time it goes back into the ocean. You know, this is what's happening, right? I don't see any way of it changing at all, right? Especially not in the United States. I can't talk for the rest of the world because, every country has their own politics. But there are things we could do in the United States right now to limit some of this. You could ban unethical fishing. You could do that. That's something that you could, that's a step we could do right now. This fishing, there has to be regulations, and if this wild caught fish is not done to these environmental standards, then it's not coming in. It's not being sold in this country. That would actually do a lot in and of itself, because then these places lose their markets. And in order to fucking sell their shit, that they'll obey the regulations, right? There's the things like that we could be doing. And we're not doing it. And I don't see it ever happening because half of the people, you know, in the country don't believe that we have these problems. Half of the people in the country are in denial that, like let's not even talk about global warming, okay? Because that's, become firmly entrenched in the culture war. But even other forms of pollution, overfishing, right? pollution in the oceans, like I'm just talking about, nuclear pollution, like Fukushima and stuff like that, nuclear waste, you know, um, any kind of conservation efforts. A lot of the people in this country don't believe that that shit's even happening. That's something that, one day God will save us. That's like the reaction that you get from like Christians in this country, for example. I can't believe that, you know, I can't believe that mankind is able to change the earth like that. It doesn't seem like something that we should be able to change. And one day Jesus is going to come back and just fix it all anyway. So who cares? You might as well go ahead and pollute and, get all your coal and fracking and all of that shit. Who cares? We need those jobs anyway. And don't worry about it because the second coming is coming soon. And that's like, it's absolutely, it's fucking ridiculous, and it's no surprise to see that the same people who believe that shit are the same people who are out there in front of that fucking, Capitol building in Michigan with their red hats and their fucking machine guns. I don't know. Why are these guys, I know you saw that picture from yesterday, from last time, with the protesters in Michigan, and they all have AR-15s. They're all armed, right? What are they going to do with those guns? What, are they going to shoot the virus? Is that what it is? Like, why do you bring a machine gun to a protest? Seriously, what does that even mean? Oh, if you try to break up I'm going to shoot you. If it's a veiled threat, is what it is, right? Um, and I actually think, to be very quite honest, I actually think this is why when people on the left protest, the cops tend to break them up a lot more than when right wingers protest, because right wingers always protest armed. I don't know if you noticed all of those Tea Party protests and shit from 10 years ago. There's always all these guys. They always have guns. They're always armed, right? The Bundy Ranch people, you know, those guys. They never had fucking like they never had riot cops show up in riot gear or whatever. Not a machine gun. You understand what I'm saying? Fucking rifle. Okay. Yeah, okay, it's not a machine gun. It's a fucking, semi-automatic rifle or whatever it is. I don't even know. But you get the point. The point is they have a fucking gun, right? And, and I really think, like, if you remember, like, say, the fucking, those pipeline protests from, like, 2015 or whatever, how do you think those would have gone if they had guns? You know what I mean? Like, what about the, you know, what about those Wall Street protests in 2008, right? Where like, God, I can't remember, in 2008 there was like right after the crash, you know, if all those guys were armed, like what about the Black Lives Matter people? What if all of those people were armed? How do you think it would go, right? Do you think the police would even tolerate that? Hell no, right? I highly, highly doubt it. I think you would see then actual shootouts and stuff, right? But, the Bundy Ranch guys show up with all their guns and take over a fucking federal building, right? And, like, threaten to kill people, and, the government never fucking comes down hard on those guys. So, is it because they are armed? Is it because what? Is it because the establishment goes easier on right-wing protesters for whatever reason? I don't know. Maybe somebody should do a study of that, Well, it is legal, so they would have no choice. I've protested while armed. They would have no choice if legal. Well, it is legal, you know, to own these things in pretty much every state in the country. Most places in the country, it's legal to carry them, in one fashion or another. Maybe not open carry, you know. Um, but, it is legal to own them. There is no state in the country where it's illegal to have a gun, right? So even California, you can get a permit to like, I think you can get a concealed carry permit in California if I remember right. I could be wrong about that. I'm not an expert at these things by any chance. I mean, you probably know way more about this than I do. 1911. But I'm just saying, it's like, I don't know. Maybe we oughta. Maybe the people on the left oughta like take a lesson there, and start showing up to these things armed. See how it goes then. Somehow, I don't think that it would be tolerated. Somehow, I think if socialists and Black Lives Matter people and Occupy Wall Street, that's what I was trying to think of. Occupy Wall Street. Somehow, I think if all of those guys showed up with AR-15s to their protests, you'd start seeing some anti-gun laws get passed. Yeah, right. That's what I think what would happen. You'd start seeing some serious anti-gun laws get passed. Anyway. Let's see what else. So there was a couple of other things. How much time we got? 1:45. Man. Speaking of this, okay, one more thing I do want to talk about because we're hitting the 2-hour mark here. We have these protesters in Michigan, right? Sorry. Oh, shit. I need to drink something. Hang on. I'm talking, and mouth is getting dry. 2 hours of straight talking is fucking me up. All right. Last thing I want to touch on. We had these protests in Michigan and elsewhere over the stay-at-home orders, right? And, right now, people are on edge, okay? The reason why these guys are protesting all of this stuff is because, things are being taken away from them. A lot of them are losing work, and they can't, then they see this, like, they have, like, this sort of conspiracy theory mindset being, like, reinforced by the news outlets they pay attention to. Like Laura Ingraham that we talked before, like this guy Bill Bennett. They got people from the news sources that they trust telling them that it's all a scam and shit like that. Right? And, they're on edge. And the fact that these people are showing up to protest armed, it's kind of like a powder keg, right? And the responsible thing, if you're a leader, the responsible thing to do is to try to diffuse the situation. Because the last thing you want is for an armed insurrection to erupt, and for these people to actually, like, take it one step too far, burst into the fucking, Capitol building there and start murdering people, right? You don't want it to, especially when they're armed protesters who are armed with fucking, guns. And not just like your Saturday Night Special, but like an AR-15, which is like, that shit is highly lethal, right? I mean, these are like guns that are designed for like military use and shit and adapted for civilian life. This isn't just some like, piece of shit candy rifle that you give to your 14-year-old child or whatever, Of course, they don't do that anymore. They used to when I was 14. When I was 14, you could actually like go down to a shooting range and shit. And don't allow that, at least not in California. But anyway, so the responsible thing to do would be to try to diffuse the situation. So what does our president do? He does the exact opposite. And he actually throws gasoline on the situation, right? And so I kind of want to show, here's a story that came from Newsweek. So let me just kind of pause all the videos and shit on this, because as soon as you hit the page, 15 fucking videos pop up. So let's go over here. Let's go to left monitor, turn it on. Newsweek. Trump's liberate tweets incite insurrection and flout federal law against overthrow of government. Ex-DOJ official. So basically, while all of this shit was happening, You know, I'll put the link to this in the thing if you want to read it more. But on Friday, Donald Trump basically tweeted his support of these protesters in Michigan and Minnesota. Liberate Michigan, liberate Minnesota. You know, liberate Virginia, save your great Second Amendment. It is under siege, right? You know, state policies, you know, are too tough. Okay. You know, why? What? So you have people who have a predilection already to not believe what the media tells you, right? They're being forced to stay home. A lot of them have lost work. Okay, they're frustrated, and they don't want to pay attention to. Oh shit! Here, let me go back to. Let's turn off my left monitor here. Okay. They don't want to go back inside. You know, they a lot of them think it's all a big fucking conspiracy in the first place, and they're armed to the teeth. And you know, our president is just like throwing gasoline onto the fire there. It's like the most irresponsible, ridiculous, childish fucking thing ever. Now imagine, you know, imagine when, like, can you remember what Barack Obama said about the Occupy Wall Street protests? Right. I can't either, because he didn't really say anything to my knowledge. I think he gave just some kind of usual phony baloney horseshit kind of, you know, people have the right to protest by the American way. Yes, we can. Shit like that. I think he just gave some bullshit answer. Never supported him one way or the other. Right. Now, can you imagine if he tweeted that they should take over the city? You know, what if Barack Obama said that about, you know, about the Black Lives Matter people? What if he said that they should go take over City Hall? Right? You know, liberate New York. What if he tweeted that? You know, can you fucking imagine the blowback that he would get for that? You know, seriously, can you imagine just the not just the criticism, but there would be people up in arms over that. And this is just another example, again, right, about how right wingers get away with shit that everybody else goes to prison for. You know, like inciting resurrection. So inciting insurrection. That's, when in that article we looked at, says, yeah, that's against the law. You're not allowed to incite insurrection. Okay, you have freedom of speech in this country. Freedom of speech only goes so far. One of the things that is not covered by freedom of speech is inciting insurrection. You're not allowed to, you know, encourage people to overthrow the fucking government. Okay, not through a violent means. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to say, hey, we should all go and invade Washington and string up all the senators and fucking hang them and then tar and feather the president and take over. No, that's against the law. That's what Donald Trump is fucking doing. That's what he's doing. What does that mean? Liberate Michigan. What the fuck is he talking about? Is he talking about voting? How come he just didn't say vote? Okay, why is he saying liberate Michigan? How come he's not saying vote in Michigan? If that's what he fucking means, right? Seriously. And you know what he's doing? He's doing it because it benefits him politically, because these are people that vote for him, right? He can't have any fucking rallies because of this COVID-19 shit. So he's going on TV and stuff every fucking night with these useless, ridiculous fucking press conferences where you don't actually learn anything, and where he gives the wrong information and tells you to go buy hydroxychloroquine or whatever the fuck that shit is, right? Every night. And you don't actually learn nothing. And then he's going on Twitter and retweeting people saying that, kissing his ass and supporting his political agenda. That's what he's fucking doing. And it's the most irresponsible thing ever. It's it's dangerous and irresponsible. For this alone, he should be impeached again. They should impeach his ass again for this, right? It's unforgivable. It's absolutely unforgivable. And this is the president of the goddamn country. The president of the country is saying that people should go in and overthrow state governors. It doesn't matter if it's sentiment or it's I don't know. See, that's the thing. It doesn't matter. Okay, you're not allowed to fucking say that, right? You're not allowed to. It doesn't fucking matter if he's just like, you know, I don't know. It's really, you know, and that's why that this right there in a nutshell is why nothing's going to improve in this country. This is why we're not going to defeat global warming, right? And when we finally do get, you know, access to a clean power source, it's going to be after major, you know, environmental destruction and wanton elimination, extinction of species. This is what's going to happen, okay? I no longer have faith in our ability to you know effectively solve these problems. I don't think that we don't have the will to solve them. You know, and that's the thing about it is that all of this shit that we're talking about, all of these problems that are coming, that are already here, we could fix these without even that much of a change in our daily lives. You know, we don't have to get rid of capitalism to defeat global warming. We don't have to get rid of our banking system, right, to make sure that everybody has access to a doctor or, you know, to give people, you know, to make economic security for people, right? We don't have to get rid of capitalism. We don't have to become a socialist communist nation where all personal property is fucking outlawed and, you know, shit like that, and the government is planning the economy down to the lowest detail. We don't have to do that. That's not, we already know that's not a viable solution anyway. We already know a communist country is, you know, doomed to failure, right? But there are things we can do. There are things we can do to immensely increase the quality of the everyday average person's life and also help, you know, help the economy and also do it in a sustainable way. And we could do all of this right now. And the reason why we don't is because it's going to cost money and certain people don't want to fucking pay taxes. And those are the people who are in charge. Right. And here's the thing, right, is that it will happen. Okay, eventually. We're going to have to. There's not going to be any other choice. You know, because if we don't, then, you know, not only will life be shitty as hell, but, you know, eventually, like, for example, global warming, they're going to have to take steps to address global warming. They won't have a choice anymore in 50 years. Okay? Because the environment will be so shitty that it's like, you know, it'll be so fucked up and so shitty and so hot outside, right? That it's gonna like cause, you know, the fucking society to collapse and shit if they don't try to do something. So they will come up with it. They will by that point, you know, and they'll have to take drastic measures by that point. They're gonna have to do things like, you know, not just carbon taxes, but they're gonna have to like ban fucking, you know, they're gonna have to like ban fossil fuels, right? And then it will have a seriously major impact on everybody's life and stuff like that because we won't have the infrastructure because we've been too busy fucking putting it off for 50 years. And that's what's going to happen, right? But by that point, all the fish are going to be dead, right? By that point, all the environment is going to be fucking destroyed. You're going to have major wildfires every fucking year. You know, we already have those major wildfires every fucking year. I'm looking forward to them this year, right? You know, all of the megafauna in the world is going to be endangered. And, you know, it's going to start hitting food production. By that point, it'll hit food production, and then we're really going to be, shit's really going to be up, you know, up shit creek. I'm most likely going to be dead in the year 2050. All right? Like, I'll be roughly 75, I think, in 2050. So, by that point, probably die. I'll probably be dead by 2055. So this shit is not going to affect me so much. But, you know, all the people out there in your 20s, if you're in your teens and your 20s and even your 30s, this is what your future is going to be like. Right? So get ready, you know, and vote accordingly. You know, if you want to try to do something about it, the time to do something about it is right now. And this COVID-19 shit is like an opportunity. It's an opportunity because we're going to come out of this, you know, in very, very bad shape. We're going to come out of COVID in a fucking, in a depression. There will be a depression by the time this is over with. Right. Uh, Something like 20, they're estimating that 20% of small businesses across the entire country are going to shut down, you know, will be gone. So there's going to be a shitload of people out of work, 30%. You know, I'd say that's even a conservative estimate, 30% of people out of work. And once we get the all clear to stop, like, you know, all of these preventative measures. Once we get the all clear, once we got that you know, vaccine and it's safe to go outside again, right? This is the shape we're going to be in, and this is their opportunity now. It's like, okay, now we got an opportunity, right? The people in charge right now of the country will not take advantage of that opportunity. They're going to do everything they can to put it back the way it was, to keep the status quo going. And our chance right now is to stop that, right? The way we can stop that is in November by voting. Okay. Now I know a lot of people out there, especially a lot of my audience, you know, they're all progressives. You love Bernie Sanders, shit like that. Bernie Sanders is not the guy who's going to be running, unfortunately, right? So now you really got to think. So a lot of people and that, you know, progressives and liberals and shit refuse to vote for Joe Biden. They don't want to vote for him, right? Because he's old, he's crusty, he's got sexual fucking allegations against him, right? And yeah, you know what? He wasn't my first choice either. Okay. I really don't want to vote for Joe Biden. I'm going to vote for him anyway. You know why? Because he's the better choice for the world. Not just the country, the world. Okay. Donald Trump is not going to allow anything to pass that has to do with trying, you know, logical, effective environmental policy. He's gonna veto any of that stuff, right? You know, anything that has to do with curtailing fossil fuels or, you know, um, spending money on renewables, he's gonna veto all that. He thinks windmills cause cancer, right? He's not. So even if we do manage to get something passed, it's not getting past him, right? It might get past, you know, in one form or another, Joe Biden. It will not get past Donald Trump. So it's like, you got to think, do you get some of what you want or do you get none of what you want? Because that is the option right now, right? We either get a little bit or we get nothing. Okay. And it's like, hey, I want to get some pie. Well, you can have a piece of the pie. Well, I want the whole pie. Well, sorry, we're only selling pieces. Do you buy a piece of it or do you buy the whole thing? Well, you know, you can't buy the whole thing, so take what you can get. And that's how politics works. You take what you can get, right? And that's what we're going to have to do this, you know, this election time coming up. So I don't want to waste too much time on that right now because, shit, what is it? Oh, right, we're already past 2 hours. But I think, you know, as the election looms, we're going to be talking about that a lot more and more. And I'm already seeing the grumblings of it, of people on the left who have not learned the lesson of 2016 and think that they have more influence than they really do. And it's like, well, you know, my job, myself personally, like I said before last time, I don't care about political ideology, right? I don't. I ultimately do not. I care about the real life effects that policies have on real people. And right now, right, I see that the policies of Joe Biden will help more people and help the world, right, more than those of Donald Trump, and that's why I'm voting for him. So, anyway, we got to end this. It's been 2 hours. I'm fucking exhausted. I'm tired as fuck. My mouth is all dry. You know, you can probably hear it in my voice. It's all cracking and shit. Let's see what we got here. Let me zoom out some so we can take a look at what we're doing. Properties. I've been talking for 2 hours straight. God, how do you guys do this? You know, there are some people that like live stream every day. Like, geez, man. All right, zoom out. Oh, that's as far as it'll go. Okay. Well, can't zoom out anymore. All right, so how about I just sort of get most of this into the picture that I can. Let's see here. Yeah, so we added a bunch of stuff. Let me kind of get a little closer just so you can kind of see some of this detail here. Okay. Yeah, it's looking pretty good, you think? You know, looks all right. I'm just adding a bunch of weird creatures and shit around. Right. Somewhat down here. I don't even know what we'll do with this, or how big to make it, because the paper is big, so I don't know if I want to fill this whole thing, because that's going to take, like, you know, we'll be doing this for, like, 17 live streams and shit. Although we did manage to fill a lot in only 3, we've actually kind of filled, but maybe I'll kind of cut it around, you know, and just fill the rest of it. And I don't know, maybe I'll give this away to somebody, you know, one of my viewers here. Maybe I'll make a print of it and then like give away a couple of the prints to, like, you know, some people, and then, yeah, maybe we'll do a thing like, okay, the first 5 guys to comment on this video gets a free print or something, you know. Of course, that's not happening until I'm able to go to a fucking Kinko's. Until I'm able to make copies. So that might be a little while. But at the very least, you know, I think I'll give this away to somebody once we finish it. I'll give the original artwork away. But it's coming along. It's coming along. Yeah. I do want to, before I go, because I have to start, I got to start pimping myself here. Right. So I do want to show you guys my various websites. Let me just sign in to, oh crap, I don't have it on here. Do I got my, let's see, is it there? Crap. Hang on, let me try one thing. Oh, well, anyway, I was going to show you my Etsy store. You know, I might be able to. Hang on one second. Let me just go to... So, I need to start pimping stuff here. Let me show you what I got. I can show you my Deviantart page. Here's my left monitor. And then... So I do have a Deviantart site. If you like my artwork and you want to see more, you can just, you know, check this out. I'll put a link to it in the thing. So I have a webcomic that I've been doing, you know, recently. Here's an example of some of my other artwork. You know, like I put this sort of Photoshop thing behind it. Right. Let's see here. Let's see, do I have a link to my Etsy store here? Okay, so I have, this is my Etsy shop. And we'll just show you this. Where I have these prints that I make. I'll put a link to this in the thing too. So if you wanna support, you know, my channel and stuff, and you can buy one of these. These are 11 by 17 coffee stained prints that I make. You know, so this is copied onto a piece of paper, and then I use coffee and I use like watercolors and sort of artificially age it so that it has this sort of like, you know, leathery kind of texture. It looks like it's like one of the Dead Sea Scrolls or something. You know, so I make these guys and I got different characters on here. if you like what I do, please consider buying something. I also have some comics that I've like self-published and shit like that. So that's my SD shop. But I'll put all of this into the video description. And I also have a Patreon right here. Right now I have 0 people on my Patreon. But if you like what I do, you know, please consider supporting. I just have the lowest things I could think of, you know. Um, I will give you, so if you join my Patreon and you do $1 a month, I'll give you a shout out. If you do $10 a month, then I'll make a video on the subject of your choice. Doesn't matter what that subject is, you know. I don't know, radioactive chicken basketball, whatever. I'll make a video on that, you know. Or I'll draw something for you. I'll draw something like this thing that we're doing, and I'll give that to you. And if you are a $20 a month patron, then I'll give you something for free from my SD store, and I'll make a video of your choice, or draw a picture for you. So those are my levels of, you know, support. Um, what else do I got? Anyway, yeah, that's probably enough for now. Let me just turn this left monitor thing off here. Okay. That's probably enough for now. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, 1911, for sticking around through the whole thing. And there was at least one other viewer that was on. Thank you, whoever you were, for hanging out. And we'll probably do another one of these on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, depending on how much time I got or whatever. And we'll probably continue on with this same piece here. So anyhow, thank you so much, everybody. And I think this is time for me to end it. Adios.